All right, thank you everyone for joining today. We do have this Slido, so if you have not completed the Slido, please go ahead and do that. We'd like to understand where you are in your Nexus dashboard journey. So have you deployed Nexus dashboard already? Have you actually have interest in the product, but you have not got the licenses yet? Or maybe you have the licenses or have not deployed Nexus dashboard.
It's encouraging to see nobody answering the last one. I think we're at least on the we're on the right track here. I like the spread. I think there's a good amount of people that maybe have the licenses but haven't deployed. I think they'll probably get a lot of benefit out of this session today. And then the majority have deployed it as well. So hopefully they can learn something new and make the most of it.
All right, so we'll wait one more minute and then get started. And thank you for completing the Slido. It is a bit interesting that the majority of people have already deployed Nexus dashboard.
Yeah, that's good. I think they'll maybe benefit a lot from the upcoming sessions too.
Agree. All right, so let's go ahead and do this off. All right. Just want to make sure you guys can see this.
Yeah, just use the slideshow view. See the notes.
All right.
Yep, good to go.
All right. Well, thank you everybody again. We do this, apologize. This session is Bring Up Nexus Dashboard from Scratch. I'm going to be presenting the first part. My name is Larissa Overby. I'm a technical marketing engineer with the Data Center Technical Enablement Group. And we also have Krishma Kapadia. She's another technical marketing engineer, and she's going to be doing the demo for you at the last part of the session. So you will see this a couple more times, so don't worry if you don't get the QR code now. You will also be provided these slides, so you'll be able to register for these two events. These other events are, they're just lifting from here. So we have this event where we're talking to you about how to bring up your Nexus dashboard. And in these next two sessions, we'll talk about how to enable your ACI fabric and your NXOS fabric within NDFC to be able to take advantage of all of the features that Nexus Dashboard Insights provides you. So those are great two sessions. Obviously, if you have an ACI fabric, NDFC, join those relevant sessions. All right. So this is what we'll be discussing today. We're going to be talking about how to bring up a Nexus dashboard from scratch. So you have Nexus dashboard, you've got it in your environment. Maybe you haven't even unpackaged it, but we're going to talk about how you actually get that physically installed, and how that we have the different deployment options, the design requirements, and all these things that you need to think about and document and understand to be able to get that working in your environment. We are going to focus on Nexus Dashboard Insights use case. And the reason why we're focusing on that is because Nexus Dashboard to bring up is pretty simple. But to be able to consume those insights from either your ACI fabric or your NDFC fabric, there's a little bit more that needs to be done. So we're going to go through that in detail. And then we're going to show you exactly how to do it. So we're going to go through the bootstrapping process, and we're going to do the initial config. And we'd love if you guys would stick around to the end. And we have a survey for you. We'd like to understand how you guys felt we did. And then also a game for a chance to win something. All right, so I'll do a brief introduction of Nexus Dashboard and then get into the good stuff. So Nexus Dashboard is a management and monitoring platform. So it initially had been multiple appliances, but what we ended up doing was consolidating these application services and putting them onto a single platform. So you're able to consume all these different services in a single place. Now these services are these different use cases. So you might want to, you may only be interested in maybe managing and monitoring your SAN controller site, or orchestrating different cloud environments. But Nexus Dashboard allows you to do these various things on a single platform and install these applications as you need. So let's go into getting started. So deploying Nexus Dashboard is really, it's pretty simple, and we've outlined this in a 4-step approach. First, identify your use case. Are you going to be using Nexus Dashboard to consume telemetry information so you can monitor and take control of your ACI fabric or your Nexus NXOS fabric using NDFC? Are you going to manage your NXOS environment leveraging Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller, which is NDFC? Are you going to orchestrate your different cloud environments? Or maybe you're going to consume and consolidate your application data and metrics. And are you going to need maybe multiple of these things? Leverage insights as well as NDFC. So once you determine that, you can then decide what is going to be needed for your footprint and if you're going to be co-hosting. So the main things that are used to determine this is how many sites are you going to be monitoring and manage? How many switches are you going to be monitoring and managing? And what flows are you looking at consuming? And we have a really cool, easy capacity planning tool, which I'll show in a minute, that helps you determine this and helps you, and you can determine, hey, do I want to buy a physical cluster? And how many nodes do I want? And how do I scale out? What do I want to do to scale out? What do I want for redundancy? As well as virtual environment, you can determine, do I want to install this on ASXi? Can I with the different use case that I'm implementing? We also have cloud options as well, which I'll go through. So there's a very detailed deployment guide that lists all these requirements that we're going to talk about today. We do have a ton of references in this PowerPoint, so we'll share that with you after. But all of what's discussed is all documented in detail in those links. So lastly, the 4th step is then preparing those fabrics that you're going to monitor, which is either going to be ACI or NDFC, preparing those to connect to Nexus Dashboard Insights. So this is actually what we're going to be covering in the next 2 sessions. One is going to take place in November and one in January, as we had shown you guys before, and you'll still have access to that information. And I didn't mention, but we do have Joey Rustino and Shaw Phillips on the call. They're available to answer any questions that you have, so feel free to use Slido in the WebEx for asking questions. Krishma will be on there as well. So a little bit about Nexus Dashboard Insights. Nexus Dashboard Insights is a very rich tool that allows you to consume telemetry data from switches, from sites, from APIC, from NDFC, as well as from some external integrations that allow you to really take control of your network, to understand what's going on in your environment so you can make different decisions on maybe more efficiency, or maybe to reduce issues and mitigate things. There's a lot of analytics that are provided in there, so it's a very rich tool. It provides a lot of troubleshooting, that some of it can be automated, some of it just gives you the information so you can make a decision on how you want to mitigate. And also there's compliance features that allow you to understand if there's AMP certs out there, if there's EOS, EOL, as well as if your business has various compliance requirements, such as this application can only be accessed by these groups, then you can validate that to make sure that what you've done in your APIC is accurate to what you require. All right, so Nexus Dashboard comes in various formats. We talked about the physical Nexus Dashboard cluster, which is a 3-node or a 6-node cluster. And then we also have a virtual Nexus Dashboard cluster. The virtual Nexus Dashboard cluster there's a single OVA that ends up getting deployed on ESXi. And you're going to have an application node and a data node, but it's a single OVA. We also support Red Hat Enterprise Linux as well as KVM Linux. You'll see that there are some restrictions on what specific services are supported on these, as well as Cloud Nexus Dashboard Cluster. So we can also do cloud. That's supported for a Nexus Dashboard Orchestrator. So for the physical Nexus Dashboard clusters, there are 2 generations, which I'll go through in detail. So I had mentioned that there is a capacity planning tool. So this allows you to understand what the requirements are, what scales that you want, based on those requirements you have. My screen visible?
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So this is the capacity planning tool. We're going to focus on 3.0.1 in this session, but if you had, say you already have purchased the appliances, but you haven't deployed them, and you have 2.3, you can select that other dashboard, Nexus Dashboard release. So what this does is, if you choose, choose the form factor. So in our case, in the example we're doing today is a 3-node physical cluster, and we're leveraging and we're using insights. So you can see where it lists out the cluster size. You can either have 3 or 6, and then depending on if you're using it for ACI fabric or NDFC fabric, there's a certain amount of sites, switches, and flows that are supported. So this is a very handy tool. It's in our PowerPoint, which we'll share with you, and you can just go through and change the different options that you want. There are limitations with some of the different services or form factors, as noted on the PowerPoint. All right, so let's get into the design options. So there's a couple different design options, well, mainly 2, but we'll talk about the single fabric and multiple fabric options within those. So the most common, or the most simple, I guess, is Direct Connect. And this is directly connecting your Nexus Dashboard cluster to your ACI fabric. So you can see that we have this 3-node Nexus Dashboard cluster. The data interfaces are directly connected to our ACI fabric. So again, this is simple. It is limited to a single fabric. So if you had another fabric, NDFC, another ACI fabric, you're going to have to do additional configuration. If you have additional sites, you'll have to do additional configuration. But this is the simplest way to connect if you have a single fabric. Now, aside from doing additional configuration, if you're connecting to multiple sites or other fabrics, this cluster relies on that ACI infrastructure, right? So if you have force network connectivity and to connect to everything. So if you have any things you need to update on ACI, say APIC goes down, there's an issue with the fabric, you need to do maintenance, then Nexus Dashboard wouldn't be able to know because it's relying on that network connectivity. And so we have out of band management now, right? That's kind of the reason why we have out of band management, because we want to always be able to manage and monitor something, in a separate network. So we're not relying on that actual fabric that we're monitoring, or that device that we're actually monitoring.
Larissa, are you hinting that it would be a bad idea to have my out-of-band management going through my in-band infrastructure?
Right. All right. So this gives you a little more idea on that, relying on that ACI fabric. So if we did do a direct connect and we had multiple fabrics, so in this case we have our Nexus dashboard cluster directly connected to our ACI fabric, where we've had to also configure those ports, to be able to for a Nexus dashboard cluster to communicate out. We're now relying on that fabric to be able to see and monitor, have any visibility with NDFC. So NDFC is connected to that data network, but it's still relying off APIC, or ACI. So that's that gives you a little more visibility into why it's not the preferred approach. So the preferred approach is to have a dedicated data network that everything connects to. So your Nexus dashboard cluster connects to your, if you have an ACI fabric at one side, another ACI fabric at another side, NDFC, they're all leveraging this data network. So this does require an extra L3 in-band connection. So this would be either L3 out in-band for ACI, or an external L3 in-band management for NDFC. But this allows you to grow. So you just need to configure that to get that additional reachability to other data networks. Other fabrics. So it's a much better approach. You don't have that dedication on that single ACI fabric. If that site fails, you still have visibility. So it's the preferred approach. All right, so what does the Nexus dashboard appliance even look like? Well, it's a UCS server. We have two different generations. As I had mentioned, we've got our management interfaces that will connect to our management network that you had seen on the previous slides. We have our data interfaces connecting to our data network. And then we have the CIMC, which is used to initially set up your Nexus dashboard. So the CIMC is a 1 gig license management interface, nothing different than other UCS servers. This is used to do the initial setup of the cluster. You'll see in the demo how that interface is used. So we end up discovering the other nodes, apply that initial configuration. And just as any other CIMC is used for UCS servers, we can use that for any platform status, troubleshooting, reimaging, etc. So for the management interface, this is two 1 gig copper interfaces, and one's a COM port, one's just a RJ45, and the other one's just a standard 1 gig as well. And this management interface is used to connect to the GUI, not the CU. I'm not sure what that is. The GUI, the CLI via SSH, as well as your AAA server, NTP, DNS, etc. So this interface is going to be used to access most likely externally. So if we're doing firmware updates, that's going to be accessing Cisco. If we're doing intersite device connector to get that PCER information, that's going to be accessing Cisco site, so external. Same with the Cisco DC App Center. which is used to download, to access the insights and those different application services. That's going to be external. So naturally, you're going to have some communication ports that you'll need to open. There's a list of them, and there's different directions that are needed. This is in our slides as well as in the guides. And there are some different ways management interfaces used in reference to NDFC. All right, so for the data interface. So the data interfaces will connect to that data network in the preferred, in our preferred deployment design. And this interface is used to connect to your sites. So this is going to be used to connect to APIC, to NDFC. It's actually used to form that cluster, which again, the demo, you'll get kind of a gist of that. This is used for application service to application service communication. So that's actually it's an internal network, but this interface is used for that. This is used for all that telemetry consumption as well, from the devices, from the controllers, and from the external integrations. Again, different communication ports are required for that. And there's on these two different flavors, these two different generations of a Nexus dashboard. We have the C220 M5. So that actually, it does have what you see here, 4 interfaces, but actually 2 of these interfaces are used for the data network. So that's the first 2 that you see here, 2-1 and 2-2. The other 2 are fiber channel HBAs. And then it's C225 M6, apologize. That's 2 by 10 gig interfaces as well. And there's only 2, so no confusion there. But we do have active standby Linux BONG configured. So that's automatically configured, so you don't need to configure anything there. All right, and then lastly, the latency requirement. So there are various latency requirements, whether it's between Nexus dashboard clusters, the nodes, multiple clusters, or the switches. This is all documented as well. The best practice is to use the lowest round trip. So if you're leveraging Nexus dashboard insights, then you're going to want 50 milliseconds latency between your Nexus dashboard clusters, as an example. But all this is documented. So as I mentioned, we have 2 upcoming sessions. You'll get all that information. You can register using the QR code. One's for NDI with ACI, another is Nexus Dashboard Insights with NDFC.
Hey, Larissa, do you mind if I just make a quick comment on these upcoming sessions too?
Sure.
So a lot of the feedback that we get from customers and partners or whoever attends our sessions is usually like, hey, whenever you guys do an Insights demo, it's always on ACI, right? And I'm an NXOS customer. Maybe I have NDFC. So what we're trying to do with these sessions is to really cater to whatever deployment you may have, because insights can be leveraged for not only ACI, which might be a common misconception, but we also have support for NDFC too. And since both of those solutions run NXOS with our cloud scale ASICs, there's a lot of telemetry that we can get. So whatever deployment you might have, maybe you have ACI, maybe you have NDFC, maybe you have both. We're going to talk about the use cases and insights depending on the deployment that you have for both of those. So hopefully it provides a little more color around how you can leverage Cisco's telemetry regardless of the deployment or solution you may have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Joey. All right. So Krishma is going to do the demo the rest of the session. If you guys have I'm not sure if there were any unanswered questions. And Joey, are we ready just to go straight into the demo?
Yeah, there's actually a couple interesting questions, but why don't we go through the demo and then we'll take a few minutes at the end and I'll answer some verbally.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good.
And I just want a quick reminder for the folks. I know we probably could have just disabled it, but we didn't. So sorry for the confusion. If you could use the Slido for the Q&A, it's a little easier for me to interact with that than using the WebEx Q&A. And we'll also be able to use your questions to address those concerns in future sessions. So from now on, if you could have a question, just please use the Slido Q&A and we'll get that answered for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Joey. Hello, everyone. My name is Krishma Kapadia. I'm a technical marketing engineer with Data Center Networking Group at Cisco. And I'm going to walk you through the entire live bootstrap process of a Nexus dashboard cluster. So the cluster is actually a physical cluster that we have deployed in our San Jose lab, and we are going to be bringing it up from scratch, and you will see how. So the demo has these different topics that we are going to cover today. First one will be, we will bring up a new Nexus dashboard cluster on the latest version, 3.0.1, that was recently released just about 2 months back. And we are going to do the entire process for the bootstrap. Then we'll create the cluster through it. And then we'll also do a UI walkthrough of the Nexus dashboard cluster that we have deployed. And we'll show you what the look and feel is like when you actually get to it. So before we begin, I think it's always important to understand what the lab topology is like. So as you can see, we have a demo lab. We are a group of TMEs that are using this lab to showcase demonstrations to customers. And that's why, if you can tell, it's a very basic lab. We don't have any redundancy as such. We just have one data core switch that we are using to connect to our layer 3 network that will then connect to our ACI and NDFC fabrics. For connections to our Nexus dashboard cluster, as we have already seen, we have data interfaces that connect to the data core switch. We've also named the Ethernet connections that we have on these interfaces. So they are from 125 to 130. We will also show you that on the switch itself by logging into it. On the management side, all our management interfaces from each of our Nexus dashboard node on the cluster are connected to this management network. We are using a different VLAN for connecting there, which is VLAN 52, and that connects to our management core switch. From there, as you can see, we can route externally to our external networks. Let's first take a look at the switch on the data side and see what configurations we have so that it's easier to understand how simple the configuration is required for just bringing up the cluster. So I have already logged into our data core switch. Let me first begin by showing you what interfaces we have on this. As you can tell, not much configuration. The VLAN 50 that we are using for all our data communication is the one that we have assigned the is the one that we've assigned our IP address. This is the one that we are going to be using as the gateway for all our data traffic that goes through ND to our data network. So let me also show you more details about the VLAN itself. Over here, as we saw in the presentation, we are using Ethernet interfaces 125 through 130 for connecting to our Nexus dashboard cluster. And these are the physical ports where it's connected on this switch itself. Now, it's interesting to know what we have configured on each of these interfaces as well. So let me just show you what the running config is on that one as well. As you can see, we have only allowed access to this VLAN 50. That is the one that we are using for connecting to our data ports on the Nexus dashboard cluster. And we have just configured this at switch port. Now, as I was mentioning about the IP address that we have, so we have provided it the IP address of 10.16.1.1 that we are going to be using as the data network gateway when we configure and bootstrap our Nexus dashboard cluster. So now when we actually enter that information in the bootstrap process, you will know where that IP lies. It's right on this switch. And from this switch, we are then routing out to our layer 3 network that will connect to the ACI and NDFC fabrics. So this is all the configuration that's required on the data front for connecting your Nexus dashboard cluster. So I think now it makes sense what the topology is like and how we have it configured. So when we go into the bootstrap process, this is something that will come in handy at the time. So before we actually dive into the demo, I wanted to just highlight a few brief steps that will be a part of the bootstrap process and how does Nexus dashboard cluster actually come up. So the first step would be to make sure that all the physical connectivity is complete. Everything is physically connected in your lab. The second step is when the ND nodes boot up, they are powered on, they are up. Now we go to the first master using the console or SSH, and there we configure the first master. We will see that we only configure the management IP over there, and after that, we are going to connect to the GUI of the first master and then configure all the different parameters for other masters over there. So as we will see in the demo as well, we only need to console or SSH into one node and the other two can be done directly on the GUI. So really easy and quick. The first master will also connect to the SIMC of the other masters and then we'll configure them. We'll also go through that process. And the ND cluster will be formed in about 20 minutes. And the entire process can be viewed live on the screen as well, where it'll tell you which different steps it's on and where it's working and how much time it's going to take to complete. And it will connect to the built-in UI via HTTPS. And in the end, we verify that all pods have successfully deployed in the dashboard and everything seems up and running. Now, one thing that is very handy at the time of bootstrapping is a pre-installation checklist. We already have this available in the Nexus dashboard deployment guide that's available on cisco.com. And there it gives you an example of what parameters it expects and what you can have as your entry. That's what I have highlighted in this pre-installation checklist. And this is the one that I'm going to be referencing at the time of bootstrapping my cluster. And we will be going back and forth using the checklist because it's difficult to remember all these things, right? So it's always handy to have it beforehand so that you don't have to struggle at the time of actually bringing it up.
Hey, Krishna, do you mind if I make one comment here?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say this just in complete transparency to everyone on the call. We're working to fix this, but as it stands today, if you make an error with any of the networking configuration, you'll have to re-go through the setup, okay? I know for some reason networking's hard. I don't know. We're working on fixing it. But all jokes aside, the reason for this checklist is that you can plan exactly what you need to do so that you can make sure that during the bootstrap process, it's as error prone as possible, right? That way you have the most smoothest experience. Because if you do make a mistake or you fat finger something and you have to go and redo it, it's just a little bit more time. So by planning it out ahead of time, you'll save yourself all that heartburn. So just in full transparency, you know.
Yep. Thank you, Joey. So there are two ways to actually bring up the bootstrap process. One of them is you log into the SIMC, and the SIMC port was the one that we have connected on this, and this is the IP that we have configured on the SIMC. So you can directly log in there, and from there you can launch the KVM. That will give you access to the console. The other way to do is you can SSH into the SIMC by enabling serial over LAN. For this demo, I'm just going to use the KVM because it's handy over here. So as you can see, I'm already on the first time boot setup of this console. So now it's asking me to press any key to continue. And as we see, now we are on this live setup and we are going to be installing Nexus Dashboard 3.301, which is the latest release. It's asking me to enter an admin password. And it's asking me to confirm it. All right, and the first thing it asks is for the management network IP address and mask. We'll reference back our checklist. And here we see we already have laid out what the IP address is for the first node that we want to provide. 10.16.246.21. That's exactly what I'm going to give it. And the gateway. It's asking me to reconfirm that my configuration is correct. If it is, I can click. If I don't want to re-enter the configuration, I can click N. If I want to re-enter it, and I will enter Y. I do not want to re-enter, so I will click N. Now the system has initialized. It's going to go through a first-time boot. And after it boots up, as we see, the boot has completed and it's at 100%. Now we only want the UI to be online. And once the UI is online, we can directly access that UI using any browser, and from there we will continue the rest of the bootstrap process. So very simple, don't need to do much of CLI work. You can directly go into the browser and do any GUI. You can use the GUI to set up the entire cluster. So we're just going to wait for a minute until this one comes up. In the meanwhile, do we want to answer any questions that are interesting? As
So there's one question. There's one question in the chat that I'll just answer because I'm popping back and forth between the Slido and everything else that's kind of happening. But it was a question about having 3 nodes and reaching the maximum number of supported flows. So in the documentation, we can increase the capacity to get more flows. Is it possible to do that? Yes. You can increase it in batches of 3. So if you have 3 nodes and you're at the 10K scale and you want more flow scale, you can increase it from 3 to 6. At that time, the flow scale would be incremented or increased to 20,000 flows per second. I know that flow telemetry and the scalability within Insights is always a hot topic, something that customers always want to be increased. I'll say this, we get that. When it comes to flow telemetry, it's extremely powerful. There are, unfortunately, limits in the amount that we can process within a given second of time. But we are looking to improve that with a feature called traffic analytics, which will have a hybrid of the actual flow telemetry hardware exporting, as well as a NetFlow v9 custom software export, which will have a little bit more scalability because we're not constantly exporting from hardware, but we'll still have a lot of the rich information about ingress, egress port, drop codes, things like that, so that we can monitor endpoints and flows based on more of a service like SSH or HTTP, with the ability to actually trigger an on-demand FT session for live troubleshooting as well. So that will be announced for NXOS in the next 3.1 release, and 8 for ACI will come later. But when it comes to flow telemetry scale, yes, it's dictated by the amount of nodes, but we are also looking to increase and make that more efficient in the flow analytics feature set. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joey. So now that we see the UI is online, we can directly access it in our browser using the URL that we see over here. So I'm going to quickly do that. So now it's going to ask for the password that you entered over there. So I'm going to enter that. Okay, so now we are in the entire cluster bootstrap process. First thing it asks is, what's the cluster name? This is something that you can define based on where your system is. So ours is in San Jose. So I'm going to name it as San Jose ND. Now, the important parameters to enter here is the NTP host and DNS IP. They are marked as mandatory, so we'll go ahead and do that. For this, we can reference back at our pre-installation checklist, and here we have it. And we'll do the blue tick to commit it. For DNS, I'll go back to my checklist and there it is. All right, and this is all that it asks on the first cluster details page. Now we do next. On this page, we see that you can see the one node that we have already configured with the management network IP and gateway. Now we also want to enter the data network. So for this, first thing we need to do is enter the node name. So we are going to do ND node 1. As you see the serial number, it's already there for this one. And we are now going to enter the data network for this. Going back to my checklist, I find it over here. You can optionally also enter a VLAN ID if you are using a VLAN in your network. We are not using one, we are just using basic routing, so we are going to leave that blank. But there is an option to add one if you are using. All right, so this node 1 has been set up. Now we want to add additional nodes. So for adding the additional nodes, the easy way to do it is just put your SIMC IP address for your other nodes. And once you do that, this node is directly going to log into your other nodes and it's going to validate this information, and it's going to fetch the serial number for us over here.
Yeah, what's really handy about this is that with the CIMC, we can actually use the serial over LAN and do an initial bootstrap of some of the networking config, and then we can use that to join the cluster. So instead of having to have a KVM console to every node like we did for the original ACI versions, we can automate it through the same single node. So
yep. All right, so it has already validated it. We see that with the green tick mark over here. Now we can name it. So I'm going to name it ND node 2. The serial number is already populated as we saw. For the management network for node 2, I'm referring back to my checklist, and here it's mentioned. I think it also makes sense to understand how important it is to have the checklist handy, because it's really useful to just go back and forth and just enter all the details as you can go ahead with the bootstrap. So we highly encourage that you have this pre-installation checklist ready at the time. And similarly, we are going to add a third node. Just provide its IP address for SIMC and username and password. And it will validate it in the backend and populate its serial number. Oops. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to name this as ND node 3. And the management IP address, referencing back to our checklist. And similarly for the data network. All right. We'll click add. Now we see all the 3 different nodes have been added to this cluster. We have provided them with the management and data network IPs and their gateways. If you recall, the gateway for the data network is the one that we saw on our switch itself, and that's where it resides. So just double check that everything looks good. Yep, so we click next. On this page, it's asking to confirm all the details. For here, it shows the entire config. So the name, the NTP, DNS, and all the different nodes. And as Joey already mentioned, we are working on having being able to change this after the deployment, but as of now, it's not supported. So we highly recommend that you make sure all the details are correct and then click on configure. And just in a second, we are going to see that it's going to begin the cluster bootstrap process. And that's what it'll show on the UI as well. And then it'll also give us an estimated time, how much time is remaining for doing it, and what the entire process looks like. So this is the exact screen that you will be on. We are using a physical cluster for our setup. So we have successfully initiated the bootstrap process. Now we see that there are about 3 minutes remaining. If you click on the details, it also shows you which step it's at and what different steps it's going to be doing in this particular process. Once the bootstrap completes, it's going to go to the cluster deployment process and then initiate that. This totally takes about 20 minutes for the entire cluster to be brought up. So just for the sake of time, I would also like to show you what it looks like after it has successfully come up. For that, we have already deployed another Nexus dashboard cluster that is also a physical cluster in our same lab, but we wanted to leverage that to show you the UI that you will see after this one comes up. And we will keep going back and forth to show you the progress on this one. And at the end, we'll show you that we have successfully bootstrapped and brought this cluster up as well. So I'm going back to our other cluster that we have. We see this is also on the same version. For logging in, all that we need to do is enter the username and password. One thing to note here is that we are logging into the GUI. That time we use the username admin and the password that we configured at the time of Bootstrap, like we just saw. But if you wanted to log into the CLI, you will essentially be using your rescue user and the same admin password. It has the same privileges, but that's the terminology that we have for logging into the CLI. Once you log in, you see your journey, you see where you are at, and this is the landing page where you will be. How this turns out to be helpful. If you go to the overview tab, you see the entire cluster health, you see the entire system status, and you see all the sites and services over here. And if everything looks green, you can be worry-free because there is nothing going wrong. Green means everything is healthy. We also see the color coding over here where green is healthy, amber means warning, and red means critical. So if you were trying to get an eye on the system and just see where you are at and what is not working, you can directly come onto this page and it will show you exactly what's going on, what's working, what's not working. For our system, if you wanted to also get details on what nodes are there and what the serial numbers are for each of the SIMCs, you can come here. So you clicked on the nodes tab. Now you see the status of each one. You see each one is a master. You see what the serial numbers are, what data and management networks have been configured on each of the nodes. And all of that information is found on this page itself. We got here by just clicking on the overview tab and then clicking on nodes from there. The other way to come here is to go to the operate tab and then click on nodes. All right. Now, considering our use case, we are using Nexus Dashboard Insights. So in order to have all the telemetry data being visible on Nexus Dashboard Insights, it's important to add the site first. So to add the site, there are some configurations that need to be done beforehand that we will be covering in our upcoming session. But for the sake of this demo, we already added the site over here. And this is what it looks like when you add a new site. And when you want to add a new site, it can be your ACI site, NDFC site, or it can just be your Cloud Network Controller site. All you need to provide is your hostname or IP address, username and password, and the login domain is optional if you would like to provide one. And by just doing these simple steps, you can quickly add your site over here.
And just one note about this as well. So in the upcoming sessions that we're doing, what we'll focus on is for ACI, for example, we'll walk you through how to do all of the in-band management configuration, how you would actually go about connecting that up, advertising the in-band management routing to your data network, and then how to ultimately connect it back to ND. For NDFC, we'll do the same thing. We'll go over how to actually go and configure a VRF Lite extension or something that would allow the telemetry sources in the fabric to get to ND. And then we'll also walk through the Insights application for both of those appointments and show you how you can consume the data within Insights. So thank you.
Yep. So considering our use case, we have already installed the Nexus Dashboard Insights service over here. That's the one that we are going to be using for our environment. But Cisco optionally also provides other services that are available in the App Store that you can download and install. And once it's installed, it's going to be shown in the Install Services tab. Very simple. All you need to do is just click Install and Download. That's it. And you will have it handy over there. Now let's take a look at some admin tasks that are provided by Nexus Dashboard. So if you wanted to have any upgrades on your system, this is the page where you will come, where you go to admin and you go to software management. First step would be to add your image. We have recently brought this cluster up to 3.0.1, and that's what we see the image for here. So all you do is download the image, add it over here, and after that you can initiate the upgrade process. If you also wanted to view details on this current upgrade that we had recently done, you click on the view details and it tells you all the different steps that it went through before completion. So it goes through setup, validation, install, activate, and complete. So these are the few steps that it does at the time of upgrading. If you also wanted to see the node-wise upgrade, you can click on the details over here at the bottom. And once you click on it, it shows you all the different processes and steps that it did in the back end to upgrade that particular node. Similarly, it does that for the other nodes as well. So the entire upgrade process is automated through the UI itself, and you can quickly do it without any much configuration needed. The other important tasks for admins will be backup and restore. You always want to back up your system if just for security reasons, right? So very quick and easy to have a backup configuration over here. All you can do is you can just click on backup configuration. You need to define an encryption key. The encryption key needs to be about 8 characters long. So if you provided any encryption key that's 8 characters long and you provided a unique file name that might be suitable for you, you can just click on download and the backup will be performed. And this is the encryption key that you need to keep handy, because at the time of restore, this is the same encryption key that you need to enter for restoring it. And there we see the backup has successfully generated. And if we wanted to restore using the same file, we will go into the restore tab. And in the restore tab, all it asks for is the encryption key and the file. So if they match, it's going to restore that configuration. For now, we are going to skip this part because we do not want to change anything and we do not want to restore at this point. The other important setting here is the system settings. If you wanted to at any point take a look at what's configured, what's the app subnet, what's the service subnet, what's the NTP and DNS configured on this host, on this cluster, you will come over here and you will see all the different details. You can optionally also enter your management and data network routes, and you can edit it from this screen. Additionally, with Nexus Dashboard 301, we also have multi-cluster connectivity, where you can connect multiple ND clusters and have it all available in one place itself. So for this, the SJC06ND is the cluster that we just brought up, and we bootstrapped that one on the other screen. And this one we have connected. It's showing down right now because it's still bootstrapping and has not come up yet. But this is a simple way to connect all your different Nexus Dashboard clusters and have it all just in one place. So it's essentially a true single pane of glass where you don't need to log into each other's UIs. You can directly have it all over here itself. Now, the other interesting and important discussion topic is going to be InterSite. Some of you might be familiar, but for who are not, I'll quickly explain what InterSite does. So we need to have InterSite access so that Nexus Dashboard can get any updates with regard to bug fixes or latest hardware releases and firmware releases, or any P-certs or field notices. And there has to be a way for Nexus Dashboard to come to know about it before you actually upgrade it. Otherwise, the only way to do it is after you upgrade Nexus Dashboard, that's when it's going to show you. But you want it to be dynamic and you want it to be in your Nexus Dashboard as and when new releases come out and as and when new bugs are filed. So in order to get that information, it's important to connect to InterSite. And that's the advantage that InterSite provides. Now, to show you that it's not currently connected, we have, as we can see, this side is green and this side is amber. That means it's not connected, it's not claimed. We are going to quickly show you how to connect it. So we'll log into InterSite. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to be entering my personal details over here. Just a second. All right. So we are in InterSite logged in now. All that we need to do is go to the targets page. We click on claim a new target. Over here, we'll go into the network category, and there we see Nexus dashboard. We click on start. Now it's asking for the device ID and the claim code. This can be easily found over here itself. So we see the device ID over here. I'm going to press this icon to copy it. We'll come here and paste it. And I'm going to copy the claim code as well and paste it over here. And then we click on claim. So here we are. As we just see, I just connected it. And we'll go back to our Nexus dashboard UI. We'll refresh it. And we see it's green. So this way Nexus dashboard can leverage and decide to get all the latest details about the firmware updates, new bugs that have been filed and bug fixes, and get all that dynamic data into Nexus dashboard dynamically as and when.
Hey, Krishna, do you mind if I just say something? Because there were a couple of questions about this.
Yep.
The primary question was, is this a requirement? Like, do I need internet access out to my Nexus dashboard? And the answer is no.
Yep.
What will happen is there will be a culmination of a variety of different maybe p-certs, bug signatures, of end-of-life notices, firmware that's available when we package the application and we ship that. So if you were to do a new Nexus dashboard deployment and you were to go and download the Insights application, at the time that application was published, any known issue or any known variety of firmware would be packaged in there. However, let's say that there's 3 months before the next release, and then there's a critical p-cert that comes out. If you have your ND cluster connected to Intersight, what we'll do is we'll publish that p-cert in the form of some metadata that can automatically be downloaded and consumed to your Nexus dashboard appliances at the time that data is published. And that is very powerful because that means that you don't have to wait the 3 or 6 months for us to publish a new image for you to be alerted. You can be alerted as soon as that gets published. So that is why we encourage customers to have Intersight. It is not a requirement. You can use ND, NDI, NDFC, NDO, whatever you want to use without it. But with NDI, you certainly want to leverage this so that you can be more up to date as far as when things are getting published to you.
Yep. Thank you. All right, so that concludes our demo for today. Now we are going to actually, so now that we understand how to bring up a Nexus dashboard cluster from scratch, we can now add sites to it for it to consume, for Nexus dashboard insights to have all the telemetry data populated to it. But for that, as we already mentioned, there is some initial configuration that's required, both for ACI and NDFC and NXOS sites. So we are going to have 2 separate sessions targeting each of the different environments that you might have. So the one for ACI is coming up on Tuesday, November 28th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. PST. And the one for NXOS is coming up on Jan 16th, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. PST. Here is a registering QR code for registering to this. And what we are going to do in this session is we are going to give you a step-by-step process, and we are going to walk you through how you need to have the initial configuration set up for NDI to get the in-band configuration from your ACI and NXOS fabrics, and learn more about and use NDI for having the telemetry data on the dashboard itself. So I'll leave this on for a second, but you will also have this at the end of the webinar for registering as well.
So I did launch the survey. If you guys could just take a few minutes, just let us know. I know it's something that you guys hear on every call. We get it, but the program that we're trying to run and the stuff that we're trying to cater to you guys is really based on your feedback. So tell us what you liked, tell us what you didn't like. If you could just take a few seconds and just let us know. And then I think, Krishna, in a few minutes, we're gonna have a quick little game. You wanna kind of maybe give an overview of what we're doing here?
Yep. So we do have a quick game coming up that's really exciting and interesting for you guys to play. And you also get a chance to win $50 at the Cisco store that you can redeem there. So hang on tight. We are just going to get the fun started in just a minute. In the meanwhile, please help us with the Slido if you can. We really appreciate your feedback.
All right, Krishma, why don't we kick off this game? We'll leave the survey open for a few minutes afterwards too. So if people are in flight with that, yeah, we'll have it open. We appreciate you finishing it, but yeah, we're at the top of the hour, so why don't we start this game? Have some fun.
Yep. Actually, before the game, I just wanted to show you that this is the cluster that we just brought up, and we saw that it's already up. So if you remember the IP, it was 10.16.246.21. That's where we are logged in, and now we are into Nexus dashboard already. So we were able to successfully bootstrap a cluster from scratch in this session, and I hope this has helped you a lot. And now let's get back to our game. So if you want to open kahoot.it on your browser and enter this game pin, we can get started right over there. And I'll wait for a few minutes for you to join.
I just want to say this because I had the same concern. It's going to ask you for your email address and then a nickname. The email address is not going to be shared with anybody else, so for privacy reasons, that won't be a problem. We'll just simply use the nickname to email address mapping on the back end so we know the winner and how to contact them. And we'll give it 2 more minutes to see if anyone else is trickling in. We'll start the game at 2:05 Eastern, 11:05 Pacific.
Just another minute, waiting for everyone to come in. All right. I'm going to now start the game. All right. It's a timed quiz, so please be quick. And the quicker you answer, the more number of points you get. So all the best. First question, what is Cisco's preferred Nexus dashboard design option?
I feel like we need the Jeopardy theme music or something right now. I don't know.
All right, so we see everybody has answered. The correct answer is via layer 3 network. We already went through the different design options and the pros and cons, and we already mentioned why layer 3 network is the preferred design option, and that was the correct answer for this question. Quick view at the scoreboard. Select all functions of Nexus dashboard's data interface. It's a multi-select, so select wisely. All right. So the
Nice.
data interface has all these different functionalities that we covered today, out of which telemetry consumption, ND cluster formation, and ND site access are the key ones that we had highlighted in this question, and that's the correct answer for this one. I see a bunch of you did get it right, so congratulations, and I'm glad that you all have picked up a lot from today's session. Quick view at the scoreboard. JWR is leading. What is the default CLI login account for Nexus dashboard? Perfect. It is rescue user. I had briefly mentioned this at the time of the demo, and I'm glad a lot of you did catch it. So rescue user is the correct answer for this one. Scoreboard again, JWR is still leading. When creating a Nexus dashboard cluster, what are the two mandatory networking components that need to be configured? All right.
Yes, nice.
A lot of
That
you
was
got
that
it
was a
right.
tough one because the proxy server is in the initial bootstrap, but there is a little thing you can do to skip it. It's not required,
Exactly.
but we still want you to use it because we still want you to use Intersight. So it's good answers nonetheless.
That's great. JWR
right.
is still in the lead. So last question. While adding a node to Nexus dashboard cluster, which IP is used to discover each node? Quick glimpse over there. It is a SIMC IP. If you recall from the demo, that's the IP that we used to enter. And then we entered the credentials for the SIMC node, which we then validated against the green checkmark. And that's the one that the ND node used to log into those other ND nodes while configuring the cluster. So SIMC IP is the right answer. I'm glad a few of you got it right, but for the others, that was a quick note. All right, let's see who the winner is. So on number 3, we have JWR.
Oh,
We
someone
have
pulled ahead.
AA.
Someone pulled ahead. Who is it?
Woo! And Marty. Congratulations.
So we'll reach out via email to claim the prize. Thanks everyone for playing the game. That was fun. First time doing that on webinars, I think. I liked it.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining today in our session, and it has been a pleasure. I hope you got something out of it, but we love your feedback. So please fill out the survey and let us know how we did and what you liked, didn't like, and we'll try to make it better the next time as well. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Please register for the upcoming events if interested. Thank you.
Yes, please.